Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse and to another Warehouse interview. Tonight we're talking power pop greatness. Larry Kennedy from the band the Jellybricks is going to be here tonight, and we are just going to go and dive into it straight away. We want to hear from you in the chat. We're going to keep this interactive. Ladies and gentlemen, Larry Kennedy from the Jellybricks. Let's do it.
Piling on the power chords and pure pandemonium. Grant's Rock Warehouse.
I am a power pop nut. XTC, Marshall Crenshaw, the Knack, whatever, Cheap Trick. See, the thing is with a lot of that stuff, you can't really classify all that as power pop because there are power pop elements, like in Cheap Trick. Not everything they do is power pop. And right. I'm just, but okay, how am I going to start?
This is a good lead into the conundrum of the Jellybricks, which is just by way of saying we're a band that didn't set out to be a quote-unquote power pop band, but we got embraced by those people really early. Mm-hmm. And then, let me put it to you this way. I've seen many times in print, are these guys power pop or not? And I usually chuckle because I think, well, we're a rock and roll band. You guys can figure that out for yourselves.
Yeah, because I noticed a lot of art. I hate to pigeonhole anybody into these categories, but that's the thing with power pop bands. There's power pop. The first Knack album, very power pop. Like the first Romantics album, I think's power pop. But then again, it's also very early. It's very British invasion sounding at the same time. To put a lot of these bands into these categories, it's all kind of silly. You guys are really a rock and roll band, but you do have power pop elements at times.
Well, yeah, and I don't take any offense at the term.
No.
The truth is, speaking for myself, I was a kid born in the early 70s who the first band that even impacted me really by coincidence was the Beatles. And it was because of their television cartoon show. So I was a kid in the late 70s who was falling in love with music from the early 60s. And as such, at that time, I was completely out of step with my peers. I was going to kindergarten talking about the Beatles to kids who were like, what are you talking about?
God, you were listening to the Beatles in kindergarten?
I fell in love with them at age 4, and it was an obsessive kind of thing that never left me. And what's so, I've got the month, that's the little calendar back there. There they are getting off the plane at JFK.
1964, yes.
Yeah. But what I'm getting at is that I personally was very influenced by the bands that influenced the power pop movement. But I was unaware of the power pop movement until I was in the Jellybricks and people started saying, oh, you guys are a power pop band. And I'm like, okay, what's that?
I'm going to ask you this, Blair. I haven't even done an intro. What I'll do is do the intro when I record the intro. Forget it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you know how everything is in the warehouse, everything is loose. Larry, when we talk today, and this isn't the Rolling Stone interview, this is the way I look at it. I like to think of that you and I are just hanging out at the record store, just talking music and whatever it goes. Of course, we want to talk about your career and Jellybricks, but I just want it to be easy going. You and I are just talking. So
I'm totally
and we just already took off like that. So
yeah.
Good Lord.
Well, before we got started, and I don't want to derail you, but
no, go ahead.
I knew Frank Sesich and the guys from Blue Ash, and I do want to say, I don't get the chance to say this often enough, that I learned about Frank after I was already playing in music, and I had probably bumped into his records in record bins in the Youngstown area without knowing who he was. And the first time I actually met him, he was sitting in a Denny's booth with his family eating, and I was introduced to him as, this is Frank Sesich. He was in Blue Ash, and he used to play with Stiv Bators, and I was just like, this is a guy in a Denny's. Like, really? This is a rock star.
Yeah.
All these years later, I see a through line between Frank's existence and the Jellybricks. Like, he is part of the reason why Youngstown was a place for me to be curious about being a musician. He's one of the reasons. And so when I think about everything that the Jellybricks are doing, Frank is definitely like a godfather to to that for me, along with some other things I know about from the 60s, like the Human Beings. I don't know if you're familiar with
Yeah,
that.
they were a big band, Youngstown band. I think that I don't know that they only have the one hit, but I mean, I was talking to my buddy DC and he says, "Oh, wow, I've talked to Frank about it too." Frank is incredible because he'll tell you stories about, oh yeah, James Gang and we opened for blah and yeah, we've hung out with, you know,
Hmm.
his life is just his rock and roll life in the era that they were playing in. I'm like
Oh, yeah.
envious. I was born too late. And I'm just going, you were, wow. Yeah, Eric Carmen. Yeah, Hullabaloo. Yeah, we'd be at the Hullabaloo. And Eric, Sirius Irie were playing and, just stuff off the cuff.
I was listening to an interview yesterday it was a Slim Jim Phantom from
Mhm.
the Stray Cats. I was listening to him being interviewed by Billy Corgan.
Okay.
He was telling a story about being at a birthday party for Keith Richards. And I realized right in the middle of the story, this is the same birthday party that Frank Sesich and Stiv Bators were at when Stiv Bators walked up to Mick Jagger, tapped him on the shoulder, and asked him where the bathroom was, that's one of Frank's great stories, is that he's like bugging Mick Jagger just to say,
Yeah.
"Where's the bathroom, man?" But anyway, yeah,
It's just classic.
Frank, he's been a lot of places. He's got a lot of great stories.
So, and I'm also in Ohio. I'm in Delaware, Ohio. So I'm like 20 minutes north of Columbus.
Nice.
It all comes back to Ohio, Larry. I don't know why, but it just seems to.
Yeah, I'm actually, coincidentally, I'm wearing my Idora Park t-shirt. This is the
Nice.
defunct amusement park that used to exist in Youngstown.
Yeah. Back in the good old days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know what Youngstown looks like now, but I've got some friends here in Delaware that are from that area. They went to high school over there. It's just funny. It's a small world.
It really is. Well, and I'm tickled that you reached out to us through Wicked Cool Records. I was delighted to get the
Well, this is
invitation.
the thing. I'm going to go on the Little Stevens Underground Garage cruise. And I was thinking, who can I talk to? And it just so happens I was able to talk to you, and I've talked to Palmyra Delran. I talked to her. I've been just talking. I had the Mighty Manfred on here the other day. But anyway, I'm getting ready to go on the cruise, and I just want to talk to people and see if we can promote it, talk about the cruise. You're going to play on the cruise, correct?
Yes, we're really excited. This is a big deal for us.
I'm excited because I get to hear you guys live. See, this is the beautiful thing about this cruise. I mean, it's jam-packed. You already seen the schedule. There are bands galore over these, I mean, whatever is it, 4 days? It's just jam-packed. I'm not even sure I'm going to cover it all.
Yeah, I'm told that if you're ambitious enough to try to see every band on the boat, that it is kind of possible, but you probably have to do a lot of fancy footwork. Like you probably have to really plan your schedule for the days on the boat to actually see everyone. But I think they say they try really hard to make it possible.
Yeah, they do it on usually I've been going on the 80s cruise, but the 80s cruise this year, it's already happened, but I didn't think that the lineup was all that hot. And the Little Stevens cruise is just hot shit, so to speak.
Well,
there's great bands on there. Oh my God.
We just keep pinching ourselves that we're involved, I mean, when the first cruise came around, we actually did make them aware that we would love to be included if there was room for us, and there wasn't the first time around. But when we got the invitation for the second one, we just immediately said, we're doing this is going to be
Oh man, I'm glad you were
fantastic.
on here because it's just going to be, I'm just can hardly wait to see your set. That's all. We're looking
I'm
forward
so
to it.
glad. Well, and I realized too, the kind of band that we are, like we've done a decent amount of weekend warrior kind of thing over the years where we've traveled. I mean, we've managed to play out on the West Coast. We've managed to get to a lot of states. This will actually be technically our first time playing outside of the United States.
Oh, and international waters?
Yeah, I mean, and I don't mind saying we've had invitations to travel that we've never been able to make good on, but it's just the adventure of an indie band that's never made a ton of money but has managed to continue to grow our fan base to the point that we really do have fans all over the world who like our music, but the ability to actually get where they are to play is pretty hard to picture for us.
Yeah,
So
the
something like
cruise,
this,
this cruise will be fantastic because there will be plenty of people, plenty of exposure. And these, I don't know if you've ever been on a cruise.
I
but,
have not. This will be my first.
Well, the thing is, music cruises are way different than if you're going on a cruise to Alaska.
Uh-huh.
You know, a lot of wheelchairs, a lot of blah. This is like a whole party cruise. I'm sure this is going to be like the 80s cruise. 80s cruise is all about seeing the bands, having a good time. It seems very similar, but it's all about the music. And everybody's on this cruise is just passionate about music and loves it. And it's just you're going to love it. See, once I did the first 80s cruise like 4 years ago, I was hooked because I loved it because, okay, bands are out on international waters. So I think that's a tax loophole. And you get a lot of bands that you would never get to see in the States. Kim Wilde. I saw Kim Wilde on the cruise. When am I going to see Kim Wilde in the States? She played on the cruise. She was fantastic. Soft Cell played. There's just been so many, bands that I've seen.
Well,
but
I know, and
everybody within a week,
I don't want to give away any, especially because you're going to be on the cruise, and I'd like you to have a few surprises. But so it has been advertised, so I'm not giving this away. But the Jellybricks are going to do 2 sets of our original music, but we are also going to do a third show that is a Beatles appreciation set. And for that, we're going to be having guests from lots of other bands joining us on stage. And
wow.
Our minds have already been blown at the opportunities we have here as far as like people we do not know, but who are like-minded musicians.
Right, collaborate. Larry, you don't know what this will lead to. This is fantastic for all these bands and everybody. It's a community, I think,
Yeah, believe me, in many ways, I mean, the Jellybricks have a humble existence, but a storied one. And it's like, we really do pinch ourselves quite a bit at our good fortune. I mean, we feel pretty lucky about our career. I mean, I don't know what anybody else's perception of a band like us would be, being around for as long as we have and not really. We've never had like a big
30 years, you've got like 8 albums. Doesn't that sound right? About 8 albums?
That's right. And I mean, we're real proud of our work, but I don't, to somebody outside of us, our organization, I can't really guess what this looks like to them. Other than that, I think they pick up on the fact that we enjoy it. I think
Is that what's kept it going for 30 years?
It's a huge part of it. Luckily for us, we're really good friends and we're like-minded. We really care about what we do, and we care about. I hate to be so precious as to say that there's a legacy we're kind of protecting, but the truth is, if your band survives past a certain point, I mean, for us, it was 2 years was the longest any of us had ever been in the same band. I was like, wow, we've been together for 2 whole years.
And I think that's a good sign.
Yeah, once you start getting to 10 years, 20 years, then you start to kind of, I mean, honestly, it's almost like a marriage that you are invested in preserving if it's good. And in our case, it has been. So we just keep looking for ways to remain mutually supportive. And I guess I went off topic, really, which is what you wanted here.
We just want to keep it loose. Go wherever you want to go. Go ahead.
But yeah, like a thing like this cruise, I mean, we just look at each other and say, how the heck did we wind up getting to do this? This is so cool. We're pretty wide-eyed about it. Even after 30 years, it's like, we're going to get to play with who?
But, I look at this lineup and then you look at the very bottom. Peter Hosapple and Chris Stamey at the bottom. And I'm looking, out of everybody on the damn cruise, I'm looking at it. Those guys are, they are power pop royalty. Those guys should be way up higher on just between us. That's the thing I really want to see. I want to see Stamey and Hosapple playing together. Because I just look at it. Why are you like little on the, I don't get it.
All right. Well, without saying too much, let's just say that's one of the things that we are going to be able to do in our Beatles set.
Oh my
Is
God.
give you a moment like that.
That's
So,
what I
and yeah,
want.
I'm excited about it.
God, I'm worked up. My buddy Ken is going to go because my wife she had enough cruises. So I went with my friend Ken's going to go with me, but he is just as excited. He's the one that said, this is the cruise we should go on. I said, all right, let me look it over. And I went, oh yeah, it's a no-brainer, you know?
Well, one of the things I really love about this, and we talked to, we've befriended Palmyra Delran over the last couple of years, and she was telling us as soon as she heard we were going, she told us she had been on the first one and that she wasn't sure she was going to like it because she'd never been on a cruise before, and she's never stopped saying it. You are going to love it.
You are
She had a
going to
great
love it.
time. So from that perspective, as musicians, not really knowing what we're getting into, I mean, I know we're excited to play for crowds that are into music. That's always a given. But the adventure of being on a ship with all these other musicians and all these music fans, I don't even know we have nothing to compare that to. That's going to be a new experience. And
Yeah, I'm
I think
happy
it'll be
for you.
awesome.
I think, yeah, the collaboration, I think you guys are just going to have a blast. But let me ask you this. So Steven Van Zandt, how did you come to being on Wicked Cool Records as part of the roster? How did that come up a point? I know that he was a big champion for you guys. What, Age is Stupid, coolest song of the year in 2024?
Well, I have to take this back to Frank Sesich in a way
Damn it, I
because
should have Frank on here.
well, it's just I'm enjoying it because you just talk to the guy. It's fun for me to kind of
Yes.
opt where it's deserved. But so when I became aware of Little Steven's Underground Garage, just the radio show and the satellite channel, I started listening to it because it was really up my alley. I really liked the music they were playing. And I remember thinking, well, Kid Leo was on there, and he's, formerly from WMMS out of Cleveland. Again, it's hitting me the Ohio feels again. And as a matter of fact, Kid Leo was playing a record by a band called The Wanderers that Stiv Bators was in. And I didn't even know that band existed. So I sent him an email. I said, I can't believe you played me something by Stiv Bators. I didn't even know he was in this band. And I was, we were talking somewhat from that Ohio-centric point of view, but I also realized listening to the station that I was hearing some of our contemporaries. There were bands that we were playing with out on the road at various, particularly power pop festivals. We were playing the International Pop Overthrow festivals David Bash put together. And I was hearing some of those bands that we really already liked on the station. So I thought, well, maybe if they're playing these guys, maybe they'd play us. But that said, they actually did kindly reject the first two records we submitted, which were Power This in 2004 and Good Night to Everyone in 2008. And we were disappointed because we really did think that our stuff kind of sounded like it would fit on the station. But this is where Frank comes in, because somewhere in the midst of wishing we could get on the Underground Garage, Frank's band, the Deadbeat Poets, they landed a Coolest Song in the World with a song from their Circus, I believe it's called Circus Town album.
Yeah, I've got that one. Yep.
And the song was the Staircase Stomp, if you know that one.
Yep.
So long story short, because I'm a Youngstown guy, I'm like, oh, wow, it's my friend from Ohio is having this success. So I just wound up back in Youngstown at a bar gig with some of the Deadbeat Poets folks around, including their label man, Mark Hirschberger. Do you know Mark?
No, I don't.
Mark co-hosts Material Issues with David Bash, and he had created a label called Pop Detective Records. And they did a number of things. They worked with some bands from Scandinavia, but also were putting out the Deadbeat Poets records. And anyway, I was talking to Mark, and I just congratulating him, and I said, I've been trying to get Little Steven's attention, and he just hasn't gone for anything yet. And I said, I'm so happy for you guys that he liked your song. And then we talked about it, and he said, well, he seems to like a lot of stuff I send him. And then it was a light bulb. I said, well, would you consider putting out our next record on your label? Because he seems to be willing to listen to records from your label. And he was like, yes, let's do that. He
Well,
was
that was easy.
on board. And honest to goodness, the next record we made, we sent it and we got an email right away. It said, Rock and Roll Suicide has been chosen as the coolest song in the world. I fell off my chair right there. I couldn't believe it. We went from 0 to, you got a feather in your cap here.
Wow.
And then that song won the listeners' voting poll for the coolest song of the year. This is back in 2012. Or, yeah, I think so.
Is that right? Well, you've been doing this for 30 years, Larry.
I know, it's getting that way.
2012 sounds good.
I think so. So I guess the way I would put it is, I think from Little Steven's point of view and the Underground Garage, we were kind of like an unknown band that came from 0, and then we made a mark with our first song.
Mm-hmm.
So after that, they were willing to hear whatever was new from us. And luckily for us, they liked it enough that they suggested, would you guys want to do a single with Wicked Cool Records? And yes, we would.
Yes, please.
And, and Mark Hirschberger, who had helped us with Pop Detective, I remember going to him and I saying, well, what do you think about Little Steven wanting us to do something? He's like, all I ever wanted to do was help you guys get to Little Steven. So you have my blessing to go do your thing with Wicked Cool. So, yeah, I mean, we've been very fortunate. And then we've been fortunate that they've liked music we've submitted since then. And they've continued to make the relationship. But I'll tell you this quickly, because this is just unworldly to me. Little Steven came to Youngstown, Ohio to give a lecture last year. And my mother wanted to go. And as soon as she told me she was going, I thought, well, if my mother's going to go, I should probably try to go with her.
Well, yeah.
See what she sees. But that's me traveling back from Pennsylvania to Ohio to do this. But nevertheless, then I thought, well, if we're going to be there, I should find out. Maybe there's a chance he's doing a meet and greet. Maybe I could get my mother to meet the guy. And sure enough, he was doing a book signing thing for his charity, Teach Rock. And so they said, yeah, you can bring your mom and meet him. So when I did meet him with my mother, once I introduced myself and my mom and Larry from the Jellybricks, he looks at my mom and he says to her, you did good with him. He's a good one. And then he looked at me and said, you keep writing them hits.
Nice.
If this guy thinks I've even written a hit, I got nothing to complain about in my musical world.
Yeah.
It is really sweet. Yeah. And I believe he's an artist who really cares about art. And the Jellybricks could not be more fortunate to have met someone who cares about a band like us and wants to see us have an avenue.
I want to see you have an avenue and build the empire. I know you've been going at it for 30 years, but this is what I like. My channel tries to pertain to, I'm not covering really mainstream bands or bands that everybody knows.
Mm-hmm.
I get a kick out of, I've been doing a series on hometown album projects. So we'll pick like QFM 96 in Columbus, Ohio. They put out 8 or 9 hometown albums, and I'll go through and pick out 5 tracks and play them on the show just to turn people on to stuff.
I can tell you,
just to say, look, why didn't this band make it? Look at this band. There's a band out, I'm going to mention it. There was a band in the late 70s called Rock Duster. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. They were kind of a big Cincinnati band, but they put out 2 tracks on the WEBN album. I think they were on number 4, number 5, whatever. They put 2 tracks out. The only thing they ever recorded. But I listened to it and I'm going, oh my God, these guys should have been something. Well, it's like the Raisins. You've heard of the Raisins. Psychodots, which is Cincinnati. Raisins were fantastic. That was another band that should have been huge. I mean, Todd Rundgren liked them. Todd Rundgren's the one who said, oh, yeah, the Raisins out of Cincinnati. Every time Todd would go on tour and he'd play Cincinnati, he would go see the Raisins play while he was there.
I think there's, it sounds funny to say this because the Jellybricks are having a pretty good run.
Mm-hmm.
But there have been times in our career that I have said straight out loud, it would be really great to be one of those bands that people say, oh, they should have been more successful. You know, that's, to me, that's a very romantic notion. I know it's a frustrating
I think it does. You do check that box. That's why you're on here, for one. I want you to.
I don't want to sound as though I don't think we've had any success.
No, but I think it should have been. Well,
but I like
still
that
going
idea,
though,
because I'm a fan of a lot of music like that, and I agree with you. Like, there are bands that people have never heard of who have produced songs that blew my mind, and I think, wow. I mean, it's just a shame that more people don't know about this. And sometimes these things find their way. You know, I mean, it's just kind of a wacky example, but again, like, I'm not the most schooled power pop fan, but are you familiar with Emmett Rhodes' music?
Yeah, I've got the box set that had come out on Omnivore. It's got all of his stuff. So, I mean, like a 3 CD set or something. Yeah.
I actually heard his name and heard it, and I was so busy with my life and my interests and my this and my that I didn't actually really take note of what he had done musically until about maybe the day after he passed away. I read something somebody had written about him that was so compelling that I thought, well, I really got to check this out. And then when I did, I discovered I love every note that this man ever recorded. And I kind of am disgusted that I didn't acknowledge that while he was still alive.
Yeah, but as you go through life, though, you know, there's moments all the time from this channel, because I have a lot of people turning me on to stuff. And I'm going, how did I miss this? Right. How did I miss this?
Yeah, well, and by the way, the whole thing about us being, you know, associated with power pop acts, I've certainly come to realize it's meant as a compliment from the people who say it. You know, like, I just wasn't that up on things. And, you know, I was talking to my own mother about it recently. She's like, well, are you or aren't you a power pop band? I said, Mom, we play rock and roll. It's just that different people have different mindsets about how they perceive what you're doing. So I'm like, if you're a person who's very into power pop, you may have a very specific idea what that means. I said, and I just personally can't be bothered to figure out whether I'm in it or not. I'm happy that they like it when they do. Yeah, I mean, because this year we actually won an award in our own home market as the best alternative rock band. And I mean, that's the sort of thing. What am I going to argue? Thank you.
Well, you could be considered alternative. I mean, alternative, like in the 90s, I'm sure is morphed. You would still, if we put we put the Jellybricks back in the 1990s, you would probably be an alternative band.
Right. I mean, and that's kind of how it is. It's like, you know, I would have, if it was the late 70s, we might have been hanging out with like the Stiff Records gang, or maybe some of the bands in New York, because there's a side of us that's a bit of a punk influenced side. But if it had been the 60s, we surely would have been hanging out with all the British Invasion bands. But
in the late 70s, this is a compliment. You would be playing the Whiskey with the Knack, 2020, all those bands. You'd fit right in. Great. So I'm just going to say, I'm not putting you in a category, but
oh no, and again, I don't take offense to it either. It's just I'm just professing to a little bit of our own ignorance about it, you know, because we've met a lot of people who really have strong opinions about it. So, you know, I've just kind of resigned myself to like, well, if we check the box for you as a power pop band, that makes me happy, and if it doesn't, well, that's not my problem either.
So at this point in the band, all four of you guys sing, everyone's writing, or everyone's contributing?
Yeah, I would say, you know, when the band started, just a little historically, I was the primary songwriter when we started, but we've always been collaborative. And in particular, the other guitar player in the band, Bryce Connor, he has really come on strong as a songwriter. From one record to the next, he has contributed more material. Our drummer, Tommy Kristich, also has, you know, Tommy takes the attitude that I'm in a band with really good songwriters, so you guys don't need my songs, but I have some, and they're great. The ones he contributes are great, so I hope he continues to do that.
But is he like the George Harrison of the group? But George always wanted his songs on records, though.
Well, I do kind of see stuff like that in it, because like I started off doing the heavy lifting, and I want to continue to evolve as a writer, but it is so exciting to see the other guys in my band giving me a run for my money. Like, Bryce, I got started before Bryce in terms of the songwriting game and in the band. But I think right now the most listened to song by the band on Spotify is one of Bryce's songs. And
It's
I just
like XTC.
Yeah.
Collins songs were the hits. Andy was the main songwriter, but look who got all the notoriety. Collins songs were always the singles.
You're right. And I think that probably irritated Andy, but
it did. Well, God knows it did.
And I think most XTC fans, and I am one, really love the combination of what they all brought to the table. Love what Andy did, and they love what Colin did, and Dave.
And when Dave came onto the band, Larry, we had those two albums, the Barry Andrews, the keyboard ones, quirky, new wavy things. XTC, as far as I'm concerned, started on drums and wires. Dave joined. Oh, the guitar interplay between Andy and Dave on drums and wires.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You cannot not like that. I love drums and wires. Well, I like all XTC. I'm not just excluding the first two records, but when they got Dave in there, I think, here we are. This is what we should be doing, But drums and wires, Black Sea, English Settlement. There is not a bad. XTC is one of those bands has never put out a bad record. A person might like different eras of XTC, but I will have to say this. Look at Apple Venus. I think that's a masterpiece. And that is a later one. They never, if anything, they improved.
Well, and you mentioned Todd Rundgren. I know I've seen the back and forth between him and Andy for years over the Skylarking record. And the thing I always chuckle about is like, you guys can argue till you're both dead, and we will all continue to love Skylarking regardless of how the two of you feel about each other over Skylarking. Because
but I've heard Andy come around in interviews and say, Todd really, it was a perfect. Yeah, I know the sessions must have been horrible.
Yeah.
Andy, we know how Andy Partridge is. He's a control freak. No one ever really produced XTC. Andy produced them.
Yeah. And I could see, Todd and Andy, you have a, battle of the geniuses, whose genius will win out.
Well, you have to admit, Todd produced Skylarking. I think Todd won. But you have to admit, what a great record.
Well, and to that end, speaking of, to reflect back on the Jellybricks, there's a certain self-production aspect that goes with a band that's been together as long as we have and has its own ideas from day one. But one of the things that I really love, and this sort of comes from being a music fan and knowing about relationships between artists and producers, we really like to walk into a room with somebody that we haven't worked with before, because we kind of know what the four of us can do. And it's just like, in other words, what I would say most recently, like Jeff Sanoff, he's essentially the in-house engineer producer at Renegade Studios, Little Steven's studio in New York City. We went to work with him without really knowing anything about him or whether we were even going to get along with him. Humorously, after the fact, we looked him up and found out he worked on a lot of music that was really up our alley. But this last record we made, we kind of went in with the attitude of, here's what we have to work with. What kind of record do you want to make out of this? Knowing that if we liked what he was going for, we'd probably enjoy it too. And that's a really fun thing. In other words, I can't say I've ever really run into too much of a problem with us. Had some tugs of war with some people in the studio before, but I would say mostly in the early days, there was a little bit of, there's older people who don't think the younger people know what they're talking about in some cases.
I'm like that.
Yeah, but
you kids.
like it's fun to go into the studio and have somebody say, "Why don't you try it like this?" and know that, well, that does sound like a terrible idea, but I'll try it. And then occasionally it turns out that's a great idea. That's just again reflecting on the Todd Rundgren, Andy Partridge tug of war.
So the Dreaming in Stereo record, everything was everything dandy there then? Because
really, yes. I mean, it's just a matter of trying to get the best out of the songs because, and I don't mean to make it sound like it's a walk in the park because there's a lot of work in it and there's plenty of little tussles that go on over the work itself, but everybody in our band understands the task, if that makes sense. Like, we know that what we want is to make a record that makes us proud and that we like as much or better than the one that we made before. So as long as everybody's kind of got that hat on, we don't really run up against each other too much. It's just a matter of throwing things against the wall and knowing when it hits. And that's another thing that's really nice about the Bricks. We're usually pretty good about like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, it is. And if we disagree, we can hash it out. But that's another thing that's, I don't know, 30 years, it's hard to explain to people what the interpersonal side of that really boils down to. But like, there's just a whole lot of learning how to be sensitive toward each other and knowing how to sidestep each other's moods and quirks. And because, we're all human, we have egos, but yeah, I mean, the overall answer to your question was that I think
I don't even know what my question was.
Well, you were asking if working on Dreaming in Stereo
was
pretty good. I mean, I think the guys would tell you like that they loved it. We don't even remember the parts that are difficult after the fact because we lean into the good stuff.
Yeah, because that's been over a year, I think. What month are we in now? We're in March.
Yeah.
The way doing this damn channel and working, everything's just zipping by. And my concept of time anymore, something that
I get it. Like you and I,
like a year ago, feels like it's like a month ago.
No, I think it's even. I relate to that a lot. Playing in a band, especially when you're in the same band for this long, you kind of feel like you did something last week, but it was 10 years ago sometimes. And you and I we'll finish this conversation and blink, and then we'll get to shake hands on the ship.
I'm going to look for you.
A week ago.
Yeah, it was just last week. So how did people connect with that record? The Stereo album. Did you find good reaction with all the fan base and all that?
Yeah. It's interesting. 2 songs that were very impacting. Obviously, Age of Stupid won it got a Coolest Song in the World designation on Little Steven's Underground Garage. And then it won the voting poll for the year to win the Coolest Song of the Year for 2025. So, but the thing about that is a song like Age of Stupid, I didn't, we put material like that out and I don't really know. I figure I prepare myself for a firing squad sometimes because you just don't know how people are going to take what you're doing. And in the case of Age of Stupid, the only thing I can say is that I was fairly sure that I wasn't aiming at any specific person, that you could find your variation of stupid in the song. But I felt like a lot of people would still probably agree with my sentiment no matter where they're coming from. But I guess what I'm saying about that is I saw some reviews of the album where there were some power pop fans who were like, I really like everything on this album, but this song is like really obnoxious. Or another song on the record, Monday's Never, which we got some great reaction to that. And that was exciting for us from a Northeast Ohio standpoint too, because that's one of 2 songs that has Doug Gillard as a guest. I don't know if you're familiar with Doug. He's
Guided by Voices.
Guided by Voices. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's from the Cleveland area, and he played in a number of bands there in the past. But he's a brilliant guitar player, and he added wonderful stuff to our songs. But those 2 songs I saw singled out somewhere as being like annoying songs in an otherwise satisfying collection. And so it's like, it's just interesting. I recognize that the Jellybricks seem to we have pockets. There are people who get it completely. And I really appreciate those fans because they're the ones that I relate to the most, because my taste is a little more eclectic. I'm not necessarily looking for every Jellybricks album to have the eclectic quality of the White Album, but I'll get as close to it as I can because I like the variety. But I think that still throws some listeners off, that they think they've got one kind of band and then the band pulls a left turn on them and they're like, well, what was that? And my answer is it was fun.
Yeah, well, I hate to say
Fun
you're
for us.
stereotyped, but you're probably stereotyped. And if you try to branch out a bit and stretch your legs, and which you have to do as a musician, or you'll be bored, if you don't follow that creative process and just do what you do, hopefully you do have a fan base that can be open to that and accept. Well, look at the Beatles, well, it all comes back to the Beatles, or hell, look at the Beach Boys. You look at all that Smile material, which I think is absolutely fantastic. Or you look at Pepper, look how the Beatles, but their fans accepted all of that. You look at the Beatles 2 years before and it's a different band. You get to Pepper, you get the Magical Mystery Tour, and it's just like, but it seems like their fans all embraced all of it. Some people are lucky.
We have like a leg in two different sides of that coin. Because on one hand, certainly because I'm an obsessive Beatles fan, it's a huge part of my mentality that I want our records to be. I want us to surprise people. I don't want people to feel like they're buying the same record that they just got from us. But at the same time, I'm kind of proud of the fact that we are a band that's kind of a reliable type of unit, meaning we are a 2-guitar, bass, drums, 4 vocals band, and we enjoy that for what it is. But that doesn't include horns and trumpets and strings and synths. And so, I guess it's like a little bit of a battle between there might be some part of me that aspires to be making like an Odyssey and Oracle or a Pet Sounds. But I've got this great little band that could also be the replacements, depending upon what day of the week it is. And I like that too. So I feel like we're always a little bit of a blend of all of those things. And so, not to get too into the weeds about it, but like when Age of Stupid comes along, in my head, okay, we're going to be a 1970s poppy punk band on this song. We're going to be our version of The Jam, our version of the Sex Pistols, the Ramones, whatever that is. And it'll ultimately sound like the Jellybricks because I don't sound like any of those singers.
I only sound like I do. This is what I sound like.
Right. So similarly with other stuff, if a song comes along and it feels like something so-and-so would do, we'll just lean into that sometimes because why not, But it does, I think it confuses some people.
Yeah, I think it probably does. But whatever. You're an artist. You have to do what you have to do.
Okay.
So if you submit like an album to Wicked Cool, do they have any kind of say on what you're doing, or do they give you total creative control? How's that work?
We have been very fortunate in that, I'll say straight up, Little Steven has to sign off on anything that comes out on his label. Mm-hmm. So if he doesn't dig it, it's not going to happen. And I know that he's given us some input on some songs. The first couple of songs we turned in, he actually made a couple of suggestions. The thing is, though, when you get a suggestion from the guy who, was a co-producer on like Born to Run and
he probably knows a few things.
Yeah, you think, well, I guess we should listen to what he has to say. But we've been very fortunate and flattered, frankly, that he hasn't given us a lot of notes. He's given us some interesting, honestly, one of the really cool things that he asked us to do once is he said, give me a song that sounds like a Who single, give me a song that sounds like a Beatles single, and give me a song that sounds like a Stones single. And our reaction to that was, I feel like if we could do all three of those things, we'd already be a lot more famous right now.
That's
But
interesting. Give me a Stones,
but
Beatle,
in
and a
his
Who.
way
Yeah.
of, I think we take that as like he's saying, I think you have this in you.
Yeah.
Deliver something to me that impresses me like my heroes, you know? And I love that he kind of meets us with that attitude. He challenges us like, don't give me any crap. Give me something great that I want to put on the radio.
Well, and I
So,
feel I mean, what band or artist, of course, that's the way you're going to try to do your best, you know?
mhm.
And of course, I
Yeah,
think
but
it has something to do with the producer as well. And, a lot of the stuff to make a great record, it's almost like sometimes, it's just like the stars have to align, you know?
mhm. Yeah, well, I don't mind saying when I mentioned earlier how the 2 year mark was the longest anyone had ever been in the Jellybricks,
Yeah.
or in a band, in our band. We've been without a script for about 28 of these 30 years, as far as what are we going to be doing next? And we've been kind of just following our nose and making our music and seeing where it takes us. And at this point, I mean, it is so its own reward that I just think, I honestly have a hard time picturing the Jellybricks putting down our baton anytime soon, because it's like, well, why?
Keep
I mean,
going.
we love making music. We have appreciative fans who really do enjoy what we're doing, and that's, I mean, I've talked about people not getting things and categorizing and all that. In the middle of all that are just a lot of enthusiastic music fans who have told us for years, please don't stop doing this. And we've listened to that. That's one of the things that we're living on, is like, you know what, this really makes other people happy. It makes us happy and it makes other people happy. So that's meaningful,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like we strictly do it because we're going to make somebody happy, but it's nice when you recognize all of that and you can say, well, who cares if we don't have a bigger hit or make a bazillion dollars? Because that's sort of like, you could make money doing a lot of things.
This is kind of on a tangent, but I thought this was interesting. I briefly I heard a little bit of Eddie Trunk's show on Sirius the other day, and he was talking about vinyl sales for last year. And, you're always the impression is that, yeah, it's a niche thing, but you hear like statistics on how many sold. I can't remember, but what he was going over the statistics, and mostly it was Taylor Swift albums that really sold. That's the only real artist that really sells on vinyl. Everything else is kind of a niche thing. I just thought that was interesting, that it's mostly her and all her fans.
Is. Well, it's funny. I don't want to be negative about this, but so I referenced the Jellybrick song earlier, Rock and Roll Suicide.
Yes.
Which it happens to be a title that was already used by David Bowie previously, but that got by us at the time. But nevertheless, the original thing we had been talking about as a band that inspired that was, and this is going back a ways now, but
go ahead.
We had already concluded that rock and roll was starting to resemble the trajectory of vaudeville. And so we were actually talking about putting out a record called Vaudeville Suicide. But the joke,
that could be the Jellybricks concept album.
The Vaudeville Suicide. Well, in a nutshell, it's like our Saucy Jack for Spinal Tap, the
Ogden's Nut
musical about
Gong.
Jack the Ripper.
Ogden's Nut Gong. I can see it. Odyssey and Oracle. And the Jellybricks. Right up there with Pet Sounds and Pepper. I could see it. The Who, Tommy, get out of town.
Well,
Vaudeville Suicide, baby.
We have at least one member of our band who would probably love the idea of us doing a rock opera. So, I won't rule it out.
I think that would be fantastic. Who else is doing rock operas right now?
I can't think of anybody.
Nobody, right, Larry. There's nobody.
I can't.
I'm telling you, the next Jellybricks project, Vaudeville Suicide, talks about the decline of rock and roll.
Well, and I don't want to be negative, but what it was sort of the recognition that what was one of, if not the most popular form of entertainment on the planet for a period is not anymore.
Well, gaming kind of took over, and from what I understood, I heard Rick Beato, was it Rick Beato? But SoundScan killed rock and roll.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I used to balk when people would talk about rock is dead. I'm like, well,
well, that's Pete Townsend going on and on.
And I still read things all the time about there are no bands out there doing, and then they describe exactly what my band is doing, and I'm like, yeah, okay, well, thanks for not noticing us for 30 years. But I do see the larger picture too, that people can get entertainment so easily. There's a reason why. I mean, I literally was out in bars as a teenager to see live bands because there wasn't something more compelling than that in my neighborhood. But if you live now, I mean, you can get anything anybody ever recorded on a device without leaving your bedroom. And that was not true when I was a kid. And
but when you were a kid, though, that's when it was your favorite bands. You had no real way to find out when things were coming out other than maybe Rolling Stone or Cream or Hit Parader or Musician Magazine or whatever. I'm just saying. And it was an event. Rock and roll was an event. I used this as an example the other day. I remember Utopia Oblivion album, 1984. I was keeping track of it. Rolling Stone had a blurb on it. It'll be out here. And I'm big Utopia fan, big Todd Rundgren fan. Just could hardly wait for Oblivion to hit the... Of course, I did that with every record.
Well, I remember waiting when the first Beatles anthology record came out. I went to a midnight sale and like half of my town was there. I was like, you got to be kidding me. But it was like that even
when the Beatles first came out on CD in 87, they released the first four at the same time.
Yeah, there were like a line at stores.
Yeah, I was in the damn line to get it. I was going to college. I was all worked up. It was an exciting day. I remember it like yesterday. It was a big deal.
Well, and I'll say this too. You'll get this completely because speaking as a fan. So you have REM on your wall. Yes. I was just exactly the right age that when I finally poked my head out of the 60s music, I started to become aware of how many great contemporary artists there were in the world. And REM became a very captivating band for me and actually for everyone in the Jellybricks. I think, truth be told, I think REM are probably closer to a spirit animal band for the Jellybricks than anybody in rock and roll or power pop otherwise. Like, we really relate to the ethos of REM. There's a very team spirit aspect to that band, a very democratic aspect. Mutually respectful, the way those guys treat each other. And what I'm getting to is it's not negative. We're about to get on a boat with Mike Mills because luckily for us, he and we are still like-minded people who love this art form. And the people who are going to be on that boat love this art form. And that's, so I recognize like when this started with the Taylor Swift comment.
It all goes back to the Beatles and Taylor Swift.
Well, the music business has largely boiled down to Taylor Swift and friends in 2026.
Yeah, kind of.
But at least they're still and friends, I mean, so I don't bemoan the entire industry not being the center of everyone's attention at this time. It's kind of like right now, if you're in Hollywood, you're probably making Marvel pictures and that's probably not going to be forever. It's like that's what's happening now. And it's, it's like these things come and go. So, yeah, that's where the vaudeville thing comes in. At one time, vaudeville was huge, and now nobody talks about that.
That record right there, Reckoning. Well, that promo poster by itself is sought after. That was my gateway drug. I worked at a guitar store in the 80s, working on guitars, selling guitars. Back in which is, I would have to say, is probably the best job I ever had because I worked at the guitar store and then played gigs on the weekend. Music. Anyway, I was on the phone with the GHS string rep, and I was asking about 12 strings because I had a 66 Rickenbacker 12 string, trying to get a set I don't think at the time, was this 84? I'm not sure they had 12-string sets out. He said, yeah, I could probably put you a set together, you know.
I'll get you the right gauges.
And he talked to me and he was going, hey, by the way, you're a big 12-string Rickenbacker guy. I said, yeah. He said, have you ever heard of the band called REM? And I went, no. He said, okay, just go check them out. I'm sure it's right up your alley. And he was totally right. Once I picked up a copy of Reckoning, because that was what was out, I had, swear to God, I had a religious moment. Because it was like so, because we're talking early 80s. It was so familiar, but it was so fresh and new, and it had all those influences. I mean, you would never hear a Big Star if it wasn't for REM. The greatness of Big Star.
You just said that perfectly, because when you talk about my relationship to power pop, I didn't know about a band like Big Star. I had to find out about Big Star through other artists. I had to, this is just a funny piece of trivia for me. I went to see an oldies package tour in Youngstown when I was a teenager. I was given a free ticket. To go see it. I remember Gary Lewis performed, and the guy who sang Precious and Few, I'm forgetting his name, but it was with the band Climax. I think he
Climax.
Yeah.
Okay, good band. Yeah, good band.
But also on this bill was Alex Chilton, and he performed The Letter from the Box Tops, and he performed September Girls, and I know he did at least one cut from what was a brand new solo album at the time, and I just remember thinking, this guy is great. I have no idea who he is, but he's great. And then later I hear Alex Chilton by The Replacements, and I'm like, why are the Replacements writing about Alex Chilton? Like, he's great. But
that Replacement song, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic.
One of my faves.
If that ever comes on the radio, and I hardly ever hear it now, I would not turn it off, because it's one of my favorite Replacement tracks. I love it. Yeah, but
those bands, the same, like just what you were saying. I think REM were a big part of me getting a further, deeper appreciation of the Velvet Underground, because they were very into that. But also, kind of like what you said, I was really into older music. I was not into the big 1980s. I wasn't overly into the drum machine, big boom drum sound production thing that was going on at the time. And when I first started to hear a band like REM, it was the recognition that, there are rules, but not everybody is following them, because these guys are making music that I would really like to hear on the radio that nobody's playing on the radio.
Yeah, they avoided all of those 80s cliches, so to speak. A lot of the gated drums, they never had that. You could put an REM song on now. It doesn't date anything. The problem that I had with a lot of that 80s stuff is when you had like a 60s band or a 70s band try to make the transition into the 80s, and that did not work well. Like the Cheap Trick stuff, the Doctor, Standing on the Edge is well, I have a whole theory on Standing on the Edge. I think it could have been a great record had Jack Douglas stayed with it, but
I thought a lot of those
Heart
sounded, yeah.
I'm not saying the songs are bad, Larry. I'm just saying that they don't age well.
No, and it's in some cases it's the production we're talking about too. But yeah, and I don't mean to like knock anybody's favorite period of music or anything either. But for me, it was what was significant about hearing these bands that were kind of outside of that was that's really where I got the green light to think, I could actually play in a band, because you don't have to sound like, one of the things that I remember at that time was that every song on the radio had a virtuoso, flashy guitar solo.
Oh, well, all the hair metal stuff did.
Yeah. And I didn't even have time to think of whether I thought that was an ill-advised musical thing or not. I just knew everyone was doing it. So every kid I knew who played guitar was trying to be Eddie Van Halen and Joe Satriani and all that. And for me, it was like Peter Buck.
You wanted to be like John Lennon.
Right.
Yeah, I
And
get
so
it.
Peter Buck shows up with a black and white Rickenbacker, and I'm like, wait, okay, there are people out there
Yeah,
that are.
you've seen that footage of REM like on David Letterman back in the day, and
Oh,
Mike Mills is
love it.
playing his Black Rick, and Peter Buck's playing his Rick through Fender amps, and you're sitting there going,
I've seen
I'm
that
in,
clip.
because who else was playing a lot of Rickenbackers? And Johnny Marr, which of course defined the Smiths, his guitar tone. But Johnny Marr just in general is brilliant. I'm just going to
Oh
say
yeah.
that. But have you ever seen that video on YouTube where he's talking about he's sitting with Fender amp and he's got this black 330 and he's going through the sound, he's playing Smith songs, and you're sitting there going, there's that chime of that damn Rickenbacker. Oh my God. The Rickenbacker in Johnny Marr's hands is like gold.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's like, well, or like Roger McGuinn, I mean,
Well,
it's
nothing.
like that thing.
My favorite sound ever is the sound of a Rickenbacker 12 string pumped through compressors through Fender amps.
Mm.
Well, I mean, that's what they did. They ran McGuinn's Rick through 2 compressors to get it to sound like that. And they were studio compressors. Back then, they didn't have guitar boxes like
Right.
a compressor at the time. That came later. So they would run him through studio compressors to get that 12 that jangly. God, that's the best sound.
Such a great sound to this day.
There's nothing. See, you got me all worked up, and we're over an hour. There is nothing like the sound of a Rickenbacker 12 string. Nothing more identifiable that you can listen to something and go, yep, that's a Rickenbacker 12 string.
Well, now, since you mentioned that, when I was 16, I used the money that I earned from a paper route to buy a Rickenbacker 12 string, which was an incredibly impractical instrument for me at age 16. I couldn't use it as
I had one at 16 too.
Did you? That's awesome. And we have a Rickenbacker.
I was a big Beatles Rickenbacker guy. All I really cared about were Rickenbackers and Hofners and.
Oh man, I was just earlier today. I just said to somebody, I still fantasize about having all of those Beatles guitars. But yeah,
You ever have a 325? Do you ever have a 325?
I never have. In fact,
well, I mean, it's something to get used to, but that's another guitar because of that short scale length and running with those Rickenbacker pickups. That John Lennon sound, there's really nothing else that sounds like that either. John's playing that Rick through those Voxes. I mean, really, there's nothing else that sounds like that.
Now, the funny thing is, as much as I love that stuff and love those guys, because I was such a Beatles fan from the time I was young, when I really got into playing, I kind of ran away from it because I just felt like, well, I'm going to be tagged as the wannabe Beatles guy no matter what I do. So in a way, that took an interesting form because I'm a guy who plays a Les Paul through a Marshall, and I still have all that Beatles sensibility, but it's like it's sort of shot by way of Jimmy Page through the smithereens into, so even when we play our Beatles set, I make no effort to try to get authentic sounds. I'm still kind of playing my sound, but I have so much Beatles in my DNA as a musician that it still sounds. You can. Still
I was talking. Beatles. Oh, I'm having a brain crisis. I didn't know I was going to have to discuss it. I was talking to. Who's the guitar player in the Smithereens? Plays the Rick 330.
Jim Babjack.
Jim Babchick was on the 80s cruise, the first one we were on. And we just got into our hotel room, or cabin. And as soon as I opened up and look out, Jim Babchick's walking by. And I went, Carol, that's because I wasn't used to this yet. I was going, because everybody's walking all over, Marky Ramone's walking around. The guy from Wang Chung's just walking around. You could just go right up to him and say hello. The MTV DJs are all over. You can go talk to them.
It is a weird thing. I have that experience myself.
But I talked to Jim Babchick, and he was playing a Telecaster on the cruise. I said, why are you playing your Telecaster and not the Rick? He says the Rick is too precious to take out on the tour. So he'll play this Telecaster.
And I believe that he's a very, I'll tell you what,
I
Jim
think
is
that,
such a like laid back guy, but as a
yeah, he's a
musician,
good dude.
I think he is like, I mean, I've watched him play live a few times, and he is as great with that Rick. Well, he's as great with a Rickenbacker or a
Anything.
Dolly. I mean, yeah,
You
he's like,
watch Jim and it just kind of flows out of him. When he plays, it's like part of his body. It's like there's
mhm.
no effort and his licks sound great. His tone sounds great. He was playing that Telecaster and it was just fantastic. They
Well,
sounded wonderful.
yeah, and he also, his tone is always like the one you know from the record. Like he
Yeah.
gets up on stage, he just plugs in, and it's like you
Plug in
sound
and
just like the
go.
record.
It sounds like the record.
And it's
And
not complicated what he's doing as far as like he doesn't use a real major like involved setup. It's so old school. I mean, but that's again the Jellybricks very much in the footsteps of a band like the Smithereens. There's a lot we
yes.
have in common in terms of the mentality, in terms of the influence, like very influenced by earlier forms of rock and roll, but kind of played with a much more modern kind of approach. I think the
Hmm.
Smithereens are probably part of the information that led the Jellybricks to become who we are too.
Well, let
Yeah, I
me
mean,
ask you this. Oh,
yeah.
sorry. Keep going.
Well, I just realized we're hitting on all these different bands, and many of them are not like forthright and to be known as power pop bands, but I,
Right.
I know they're all identifiably influential upon our sound
Yeah,
as a
we could
band.
be doing this for 3 hours just talking music, but we should probably wrap it up. I don't want to keep you too long. If we're trying to get someone hooked on the Jelly Bricks,
Mhm.
what 3 songs would you recommend? When you think Jelly Bricks, what do you think of? What do you think? It could be one of your songs, could be someone
Hmm.
else's song. Is there anything that you would recommend people to go out and listen to get the passion going if they're not familiar with your work?
Well, the first song that I would actually recommend is a song of ours called About the Weekend that is on our Youngstown Tune-Up album. And the reason I suggest that is because it has an accompanying music video that people really have enjoyed.
Wait a minute.
So, and I like the song. So between the music video and the
Youngstown,
song,
wait a minute. Wait, you got to back up. Youngstown Tune Up.
yeah, we have an album called Youngstown Tune-Up.
Why did I,
Wait,
my
have you heard
brain,
that expression before?
maybe I haven't heard that one.
Okay, because that's a decent little story if you're
Go
not
ahead.
familiar.
We got a minute. If you got a minute, you can go ahead and talk. It's fine.
Well, I should
What's the
first say
story?
we recorded that album in Youngstown. So we were actually recording it. Pete Revere, who's a member of a brilliant band out of Youngstown called The Infidels, who were produced by Frank Sesich back in the 1980s.
Of,
There
of course it
you go.
was.
That's why I say he's like the godfather in Youngstown. We recorded that record in Youngstown, and while we're in Youngstown doing this and thinking about what the title for our record should be, I remembered that I had always thought it would be fun to write a surf instrumental called the Youngstown Tune-Up because the Youngstown Tune-Up is actually a nickname that emanates from the late 60s and it referred to what was a very high percentage of mob-related car bomb incidents. So
Mm.
in Youngstown in the late 60s, people's cars were blowing up. And it was in the national news for a time to the point that it achieved the nickname Youngstown Tune-Up. But this was all mob related. It was mobsters blowing each other up in their cars. But when we're in Youngstown making this, the play on words occurs to us. Oh, it's a Youngstown tune-up. We're tuning up in the studio. So it's a half a reference to an old mob reality, but
Yeah. Yeah,
Youngstown
I
is
get it.
full of lore and personality, and that was sort of an effort on our part to acknowledge that because it's a huge part of me.
Right.
I carry
Well,
Youngstown with me pretty heavily as a person.
so does my buddy DC.
Yeah, I
Carries
can't quite
Youngstown.
explain that, but a lot of people I know from there very identified with the
Yeah, he says
area.
it was a great when he was a kid. I think DC graduated. He's older than I am. I think he graduated like 75 or something. But he said when he was a kid during that era, Youngstown was a great place.
Hmm.
A lot of music stuff going on. I mean, there was an agora there.
Hmm.
You know, it was like it was happening musically. Well, you know that there was all kinds of bands. That
Hmm.
whole section, you know, Cleveland, Akron, Youngstown area, just a hotbed of talent, you know?
Well, and I really did believe as a Youngstown kid that you could get in a band and make something of yourself because, and I heard somebody else talking about this the other day, how if you meet somebody from where you're from who's
Hmm.
accomplished something, it plants the idea in your head that you could do that too.
Yeah.
And Frank Sessage is a part of that. The Human Beings were a part of that. The Raspberries were a part of that.
Oh, the
Um,
raspberries.
yeah, I wasn't as
Right.
familiar with the Cincinnati bands, but nevertheless, in Youngstown, there were plenty of people who were paying attention to the Raisins, and the Bears is another one that
The
comes to mind.
Bears, which was the Bears, ladies and gentlemen, just so you know, is essentially the Raisins got back. Okay. The Raisins, Adrian Belew produced the one and only Raisins album. Raisins also had several singles out. There's been stuff that's been released on CD that's probably out of print now.
Hmm.
Adrian Belew produced the first Raisins record, and somehow the Raisins evolved into the Bears, and Adrian Belew played with the, well, kind of. The Raisins become the Bears, but it was really the Psychodots. Psychodots are the Bears without Adrian Belew.
Okay, well, you understand it better.
Oh, I love it. I've got
Yeah.
all of it. I've got all of it. It's some of my favorite records. The Psychodots records, I like the records better than the Bears records.
Well,
Because I
yeah.
like Adrian Belew, but when you don't have Adrian in there and you just have uh, Rob Fetters can handle all the guitar stuff. The guy's a brilliant player.
Hmm.
There's just so much talent. And I've seen them live in Cincinnati, and they were just fantastic.
Well, it's nice here in Central PA, the Jellybricks, particularly because we've been around so long, we've really started to get recognized in Central Pennsylvania as a Pennsylvania band, which I really take a lot of pride in, but I
Yeah,
also
cool.
maintain my Youngstown roots and connections. So I still feel very much like we're a part of that as well. It's just because I really did admire all those people that came before me. And there are others that come to mind. Phil Kagi was in Glass Harp,
Yeah,
still a
Frank
successful
has
solo
stories
artist.
about Glass Heart.
Yeah, I mean, the James Gang, being aware that these people were from the region. I mean, I remember, oh my goodness, I dated a girl in Akron who babysat for one of the Mothersbaugh brothers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's just the idea of like, I grew up knowing that Devo emanated out of Ohio, and I thought, well, if Devo could come out of Ohio, then anything could come out of Ohio.
Yeah. Well, Chrissy Hine, there's another one.
Yeah, yeah.
But Devo, I think, really is the Akron band that really everybody does really know. You know, Chrissy Hine, they
Mhm.
may not realize it, but
They know her, but they may not realize she's from.
they know Devo's from Akron.
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, I'm sorry. What were your other? Give me your three tracks that you think define the band, and you'd want to turn people onto.
So
Quick,
I'm
Larry,
saying
quick.
about the weekend because I noticed that like within my own family where, your family loves you and they applaud everything you do, but they aren't necessarily always into your music. About the Weekend is a song that like everyone that I ever knew got into that and they dug it. So I put that
Mhm.
on the list.
Yeah.
The second one I'd put on the list would be a song called Can't Get Over You, which is on our Some Kind of Lucky album, the one right before Dreaming in Stereo. And I say that because that is our all-time most listened to song on Spotify. So people must
All
really
right.
dig that. Uh,
Evidently.
and I do dig that song. The third song, gosh,
Hmm.
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 Actually, beyond that, I would almost say you could pick any random thing. Actually, you know what? I've named a song I sing and I've named a song that Bryce sings. So I'll go ahead and name one that our drummer Tom sings off the latest record.
All right.
Devil's a Day Away was one of the singles. And I think for some people, it's the favorite song on the record. So, people are only starting to figure out that Tom is writing and singing.
Hmm.
They haven't even completely placed that in some cases amongst our fans, but Tom has a really nice voice and he's a really good songwriter. So yeah, I'd say, and with that, you could check out a song that I sing, a song that Bryce sings, a song that Tom sings, And if you don't like any of those, then you know you hate the Jellybricks.
Nah.
You know we're not for you.
But still, new album, Dreaming in Stereo. Well, it's a year old, but it's still the new. Damn it, it's still new. Newish. Still out there. Any plans? Oh, no, we got the cruise. What's any future plans at the moment as far as playing gigs, any more musical offerings, and then we'll wrap this dog up.
Well, we do have shows on the books. I mean, we're going to be back out in Youngstown. I mean, I don't know if you actually want dates because I don't know when you're planning on airing this. But
well, this will be up. What is today? Thursday?
Yeah.
I'll have it up this weekend.
Well, let me see here. I can do a quick rundown because I have access to our info here. Let's see. So we have the cruise starting April 3rd. And it might be a little late to book that if you haven't already booked it. But
I don't know if there's. I think you can still book it.
Yeah, that's the Little Steven Underground Garage Cruise, and believe me, we're one of the little names on the poster. There are a lot of bigger ones than us.
But not in my eye, you're not.
Thank you.
You're one of the. I want to see you guys. I want to see more of the smaller print bands. Me personally, that's what I get excited.
Well, and you know what? We've been getting messages from people who are saying they're looking forward to seeing us on the boat, and that is really exciting because I realize there are people out there who are getting to hear our stuff on the radio, and this is like, oh, I finally get a chance to see these guys, So I relate to that as a fan. Let's see, we're going to be in our home market, Mechanicsburg, PA, April 18th. We're playing at Metropolis Collective with Candace Campana. May 2nd, we're going to be at West Side Bowl in Youngstown, Ohio. This is a fantastic venue that is a combination bowling alley, performance space, record store, eatery. It's dynamite. You should come check that out.
Yeah.
Then in May 22nd, we're playing the Vineyard and Brewery in Hershey. That's a 3-hour all Jellybricks show. We've had some people travel to come and see us in Hershey because that's one of the few times you get to see us play so much music. So, we do a lot of material, deeper cuts, things like that. And we have other dates coming up, but as far as musically, we're working on new music and nothing is set in stone yet, but we are actually talking about reinvigorating some of our older catalog stuff with some refreshed. Yeah, nice. I'm trying not to make any big promises yet, but we have fans who don't even really know about half of the music that we've made.
Well, now they're fully aware of Vaudeville Suicide being part of on the plans. So
the upcoming musical.
Would I steer you wrong? We go back an hour and 20 minutes.
I know.
I'm on your team. I'm telling you, Vaudeville Suicide by the Jellybricks, a rock opera.
Now, technically, wasn't American Idiot some form of a rock opera?
Oh, yeah, but not that could compare with what you could do.
It has been a minute, so,
Yeah, people forgot.
There's probably room for that.
I'm putting the Jellybricks on par with the Who Tommy. So I figured it could fit in that zone.
Hey, I'll take it. And that takes it down to the source, too, because if I have it correct, Pete Townsend is the one who coined the phrase power pop.
He did.
And I literally just explained this to my mother because she was asking me all about what's the deal with power pop? What is it? And I said, well, if people associate us with what Pete Townsend tried to describe his own band as, I will never take that poorly. I'm like, that's
and if you want a dictionary example of what power pop is, all you have to do is look to the track The Kids Are All Right. And that pretty much sums it up.
Well, and they're another band that we like to cover. So
who wouldn't?
Yeah.
We used to do I Can't Explain, and I played it on my Rick 12 string.
We do that one. Oh, and I can't claim to do it on the 12. I'm a little lazy about that live.
I'm working on you. I'm working on it.
But
we'll
I
get you back on that 12 string.
Do the Marshall version.
That's fine. All right. Well, we can then. God, we went almost an hour and a half. See, I knew we were just going to yap. Anyway.
I hope you don't mind. I don't mind.
If you don't mind. No, but I'll let you go. Larry Kennedy, ladies and gentlemen, from the Jellybricks. They will be on the Little Steven's Underground Garage cruise coming up on April 3rd. Yeah, we're flying in like on the 1st, and there's some record stores I want to hit down there. We're staying. I think we're in Fort Lauderdale, maybe. I don't know. Spending, we'll be there. Don't want to
I'm
rush
still
to the
catching
boat.
up with the travel arrangements, and we're still
Yeah.
rehearsing Beatles songs. So
He's fantastic. See, I'm hoping that when you do that Beatles set, you'll be using a Rick 325 through a Vox Super Beetle.
well, see, I have to caution you. We have no Rickenbackers planned for that set, so I imagine there may be a Beatles fan in that audience who's
I
like,
bet.
"What is this?" But I'm
Nah, it'll
just
be
here to say,
fine.
like, look, there's a lot of bands out there that get the costumes, the accents, the guitars, everything right. This is the only time you're going to get to see the Jellybricks doing our best impression.
I think I think Ken, who I was talking to, said Palmyra was talking about you guys. She was talking to, that's what, because he wasn't sure which set to see. I don't know what's going on at the same time the Beatles set is. But Palmyra was talking you guys up the other day on her show, saying this Beatles set is going to be fantastic. She's been talking it up on her show on Sirius XM.
That's awesome. That's
so
awesome.
Ken said, man, Palmyra was talking. I'm going to have to make sure I hit that.
Awesome. That's
Things
awesome.
are going, things are good. Things are good, Larry. Things are good for you. And hope you have a good time. I will see you on the cruise. Like I said, I don't know what to expect on this one because I haven't done this one before, but I bet it's going to be like the 80s cruise. Similar vibe, everybody having a good time, music. It's all about the music.
Well, I forgot that you were going to be on the cruise, but this is a nice glimpse of, if everybody on this boat is even half as likable as you, then we should have a really good time. So
I'm just geeky. I'm just obsessed with all this stuff.
Well, I feel like we're going to be amongst our people, as
I
it
think
were.
so. All right, cool. All right, everybody, go check out some. Oh, geez, I just had a brain crisis. Go edit. Let me think of the ending. I was just kind of going into it. I didn't have anything prepared. All right, cool. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Larry Kennedy from the Jellybricks. Go out and find some Jellybrick stuff. You've got his 3 tracks that he recommends. Go check out the band. Leave a comment down below. Please like, subscribe. If there's any links that you want me to share down below, I can do that. If there's anything.
If you want to just say jellybricks.com leads everywhere, but the other thing is there's nothing out there with our name besides us. So if you type Jellybricks into your browser, you're going to find us because we're the only ones that called ourselves that.
There you heard it. All things lead to the Jellybricks when you use the band name. So there you go. All right. Gentlemen, God, I'm so used to panel discussions. Gentlemen, it's been a great show.
We've enjoyed ourselves.
We've enjoyed ourselves.
Thank
Larry,
you,
I appreciate
Grant.
you coming on. We'll try to get you some, I don't know. I'm doing what I can for you.
Hey, I really appreciate the conversation. If there's one thing that the Jellybricks we don't think about promotion much.
Mm-hmm.
We know we have to do it, but like a promotional behavior that feels like I'm just having a nice conversation with somebody, I could do all day. So that's why it's an hour and a half.
Yeah. All right, cool. Go check out some Jellybricks. We'll see everybody.
Thanks
Larry,
a lot.
Thanks. Appreciate it. This was fun. See you on the boat.
Looking forward to it.